Welcome. This is...
It's hard.
Yes, this is hard. This is not the first time we are collaborating with Jarek on a presentation. It's actually the second time, but it makes it even harder. We would like to welcome you to a talk about stages of maturity in the microservices world. To begin with, this will be honest, like we are honest people with Jarek, opinionated, biased view on kind of a state of our industry having a microservice everywhere craze in the background. Yeah, more or less. And of course, there's a disclaimer.
Disclaimer?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have like 50 minutes, I think. So we'll try to not mention the technology during this 50 minutes. So no source code. It's okay for you? You're still okay. And we will not try to convince you that microservices or serverless next year or reactive next year is a good technology. Okay? We will not try to convince you. So you will not leave this room with any opinion or microservices are good or bad. Okay? We will not solve any of your questions you have. Because, and this is my slide, Kuba didn't want this slide for a reason. Who knows Timothy Leary? So to these people who don't know Timothy, he was a really famous person and he's my personal coach. For one reason, in the 70s, he discovered LSD. And he was one of the greatest promoters of LSD. And that's why he's my personal hero. And he, in his book, Tune In, Tune Out, written the statement that it is important to question authority. You are on the conference, and in front of you, there are some authorities in different rooms, not in this. And you have to question whatever you hear. Because some people are selling something for you. Some people want to be nice, and you need to be need to question whatever they are telling the truth. We are not always right, but always honest. And our wives are saying sometimes funny. But it's my wife's opinion and Kuba's opinion. My turn. Still, okay. We don't know the order of the slides. Why we are talking about microservices since 2015 on every conference, on corridors, over coffee, with our spouses, partners, children, with everybody. Everything is micro. For the last 2-3 years, what is the reason? I think I know the answer. Every year, do you know Sesame Street? And at the end of every part of the Sesame Street, there is this sentence that this piece was sponsored by letter A and number 13. And this is like in our industry. Every year there is something new, shiny. Why we are going crazy about this new stuff? Because our work is boring. Just admit it. You can say it loud. My work is boring. And it's okay. I do write REST services. Do you think it's creative work? How many REST services you can write before you are going to die or retire? Every time I write microservice, I have a small scratch on my desk with a knife. So I have a lot of small scratches, and when the free space is out on my desk, it means I had to change job. Okay? Because our work is boring. And we need something that brings promise and hope. Because usually the architecture, have you seen it? You implement new architecture, you think it will solve your problem, and 6 months later you sit with your friends and say, it doesn't solve any of the problems. Let's choose new architecture. So we are implementing all of these things because we are bored. I think so. There are other reasons. as well.
Yeah. And these other regions can take different forms and can express itself in a different way. So we'll walk through some of those. One of those is there's this concept of a cargo cult architecture. And yes, it takes many forms. And it has been said many times on this conference already that it can be your in-house framework. You know, these small, shiny thing that you've built in internally, and you feel very emotional.
It's like every PHP developer had to write CMS at some point of life. Yeah?
Yes, yes. That's a curse of programmer. And then we have we have this framework because our domain, our business, our company is specific. You know, who heard that? You know, yeah, we do it differently because we are specific. It's every time, and still, on the other hand, we are about to protect the existing state. There is this architect who is not coding for past 10 years already, but at some point he did this Maven archetype that defines the service in your company. And now, after 5 or 6 years, you are still using it. Nobody knows why, but he just keeps doing it. He just keeps forcing it. There's this cargo cult, and we want to escape it. We don't want to be in this world anymore, because at the same time as we are forced to do the same things in a way we don't exactly understand why, the competition never sleeps. They're just running away. The cost of maintaining this hydra of cargo cult in the company is ever growing. It has many forms. It can be expressed in many ways. Like, no, we don't take open source into our projects. It's not safe. So we will just copy the open source into com.company.internal package in our application, so we don't have this external dependency. You've probably seen that, not once, not twice. Okay? And as this kind of code base keeps growing, it becomes harder and harder to attract new people to the company. And what we start to see is that there's this concept of resilient organization, of ability to adapt to change, to respond to change, and it's not happening. The business comes over and say, we've measured and we've spoken with our users, and this button, it should be on the left and it should be blue, not red, because it will work better with users. They are humans. And you look at it and say, yeah, I know, but it's 30 days. It's 30 days to move a button from right hand to left hand side. And then they came and say, no, that's not resilient organization. That's not the way we would like you to work. You're not responding to change in a way that we would like you to respond to change. So then they come with this thing called agile. We will be agile. We will respond to change. But the thing is that as long as we don't loosen this dependency between people and software, we won't change much. As long as you still have this single person in a company, this bus factor 1, that is very important not to lose him, because that's the only person who knows how the mainframe works. That's not possible to change the organization. And that's why we start to think maybe we can just make a giant hop and jump to a new architecture. But that's not the only reason.
Look at this picture. You know who it is? It is you. And this is the legacy system. And you know why it's snake? Have you read Bible? You read it. It's a devil. It's a Satan. It's legacy. The thing is that your organization is not special, and your project is not special. Everybody has it. Every organization, because I'm changing job quite often for various reasons. You know me. And every time they say, we are better than anyone else. When you join this company, they give you access to the repo, and they say, oh my God, again. And usually it's C++, Tuxedo, Cold Fusion. Who knows Cold Fusion? Any active Cold Fusion developers? I know, I work with you. It's about this company in Krakow. EJB2, PHP, Delphi. I started as a Delphi developer. Who knows TPF? Transaction Processing Facility. Sabre. They also have this burden. Yeah? Nobody tells you, look at the job descriptions. They don't say we have a TPF, we have fancy new technologies. But as we are doing these slides with Kuba, this is the moment when I started to cry. I am old, emotional people. Because I understood that behind every legacy, there is a tragedy. Not only, people working over hours, but another tragedy. Let's look at it. You have legacy. The first thing that happens, the hipster developers don't want to work with it. You know the hipster developers. You know what they do? If if framework has a title stable, it's not cool anymore. That's why in JavaScript they are changing framework so often, because somebody said it's stable. But it's not a problem. They will go away sooner or later to Starbucks, doing coffee, or finding a nice place in Bieszczady Mountains. So they will go away. The problem is, and this is the challenge, that when you have legacy, you can't use any new stuff. Because you can't. Try to run Mongo with JBoss 4.2. Lucky you. Yeah? And what happens is the organization goes into this state of equilibrium that, for first, everybody knows it is a problem. We know we have a legacy. Yeah, we have it. Business needs new features, because they always need new features. Executives need business continuity. They don't care. Your CEO, CTO doesn't care about your product. No, as long as it makes money. And it's called business continuity. This is making money, nothing more. Hipsters developers don't want to touch it. Seniors don't want to touch it either, because this is called job security. If they fix it, somebody can fire them. Okay? So as long as you don't fix it, you have your work. So where is the tragedy? Yeah? Everybody knows it is a problem. Nobody wants to touch it. It makes money. Unfortunately. The legacy system makes a shitload of money.
But there are other reasons, not purely organizational, not purely human-related. We would like to move away from legacy, from existing services. We are on the way to microservices, because that's the way for us to tame fires, to keep things separated and avoid this black hole down thing. Because if in our application the payment doesn't work, in our e-commerce side the payment doesn't work, it's bad, because...
Don't say e-commerce, say Allegro.
No, it's nothing personal. I don't work there. If it doesn't work, obviously customers cannot buy stuff, but it doesn't mean that they cannot search through the site, look for new products, and just explore the existing products. It doesn't mean they cannot look through the history. The problem with the legacy systems is that we keep all those things together, and when one falls apart, everything else just usually stopped working. The other thing, that's the problem, or the reason for that, is that not all features are equal. Different features have different access patterns. Different features have different scaling needs. And the thing is that in monolith, in our legacy, we just keep them together. And we think that, well, maybe on the way to microservices, we can separate them, and we can use them differently. That's very tempting. That's how we would like to approach it. Because, for example, we have this part of our application that is used once a year. It's for reporting. but it's still with the whole our legacy system, and we just keep maintaining it. And if we could have separated it, maybe it'll be easier at some point. Maybe not. What's more, we go for these atomic releases. We release everything together. We have a feature that is ready, but we are not releasing it because, the feature is ready, but we are not releasing it. It's not used by the customer. So it's like flushing money in the toilet. Who had this, delay in releasing the feature because some other feature that we were not entirely dependent upon, but it was in the queue for release, just failed over, and the release and the deployment cycle, we missed the deployment window, and then we have another 3 months for another deployment window, and we are just waiting with this feature. And then after half a year, somebody finally deploys it, and there's a bug in there, and they call you and say, like, we deployed this, and there's a bug. It's like, what? Like, I did like half a year ago. And we have those atomic releases, and we would like to also avoid it. We would like to move away from that. And then the architect came and said...
The architect. This is usually lonely architect. Nobody talks with these people. Do you talk with your architect? No. But he sits in his lonely tower, made of ivory, uncertainty, and sadness. And he thinks, yeah, we're screwed, let's do microservices. He's lonely, without the duck, the rubber duck. Because even the rubber duck doesn't want to talk with him. And he says, let's create small modules which only have one reason for a change. And he says, let's communicate over well-defined interfaces. And almost shouting, let the output of the one microservice becomes the input of another one. Let's create tools to automate our work. Let's create new microservices rather than refactor the old one when requirements change, And he's happy, smiling. He wants to get out of his tower to developers. And let's embrace joy of distributed computing. Let's move fast and break things. And developers saw and thought it was good. And everybody wanted to adopt it.
So let's be microservices. And our intention is not to analyze whether it's a good movement or it's a bad movement, whether it will solve all your problems or it will just create another bunch of that you have never thought about. We just would like to point out several things that we find important. And it won't be a checklist like Joel's Polski checklist that you will have to run through, but it will be just a thought to let you see for yourself whether you are ready to embrace the microservices or whether there are certain things that you should have been doing up front before you jump on this bandwagon. So the first thing that we thought about is do things more often. Because if it hurts, do it more often. If you have your release cycle once a month and always after going on production, you have this hectic night of fixing everything, then do not do it once a quarter, once half a year, do it every week. Because if it hurts, just do it more often, because it will hurt so much that you will finally fix it. And the microservices thing says the short feedback loops are essential. They are foundation of the microservices. So if you are now deploying every half a year, maybe that's something you should change up front and then think about microservices, because deploying microservices every half a year doesn't really make sense. If you have one service or two services, that might be fine, but then you can deploy them manually. But if you have like 20 or 40 or 400, it will be simply unmanageable. So do it more often, maybe do it automatically. And then what we thought that maybe before jumping on the microservices, there are certain questions that we should ask ourselves. Like, how should we automate our deployment? Automate. Like what packaging, what deployment mechanism, how to switch over, whether we should go for green-blue deployments or whether, doesn't matter. How to roll back automatically, or whether just go on forward, just keep on rolling. There are decisions, and we should make them. We should make them kind of upfront. We don't need to say, yeah, we'll be doing like this. We just have to rethink what is most suitable for us and have this upfront. How to keep the backward compatibility of our API. Should we, or we don't care? That's something to think about. So maybe kind of a resolution before we go on to the microservices, that I will never ever have to recompile and repackage the application to change configuration, or I will never ever have instances of my application tied to a single IP addresses, or I will never ever wake up in the middle of the night to roll back the deployment. If I don't do that, then maybe I'm kind of more ready for the microservices.
You work in organizations, yeah? So the question is, in the last 6 months, how often you heard this term, let's break silos? Every CTO, they have a hidden book, 20 things every CTO should say at least once a year. They say break silos. The thing is that they don't know that we are creating these silos. Not they. They are just, figures. We are creating silos, and I will tell you how. Every day at stand-up. My job is done here. I have pushed code to the repo, and it works on my machine. Every organization. This is how you create silos, not CTO, CEO. Because the thing is, somebody told us that we are developers, and this is the problem. So we think we develop software. We don't care if it runs. As long as it develops, it's OK. Running is not my business. The thing is, and I spent a lot of years in different organizations, developers tend to ignore infrastructure. They say somebody will run it. They even think that there is no CPU, but there is a secret machine with small drove, or something running and mangling these bytes inside. Because there is no silicon.
A cat.
A cat. So the truth is the infrastructure, the network, the storage is a bloodstream of your organization, not your code. OK? If you ignore infrastructure, the infrastructure at some point of time will ignore you. And they will say, no, you can't deploy this software. As in one of my cases when I decided, it would be lovely to have InfiniSpan, technology name. InfiniSpan, the data grid in my application. And I installed InfiniSpan. And I struggled like 6 months to get it working because I didn't talk with the guys from network operations that actually multicast doesn't work in our network. So InfiniSpan can't connect. And I ignored the infrastructure. This is the moment when you have to say, can I change people or should I change people? Because not everyone is ready mentally to think about infrastructure. Who is on duty today?
You.
And I. Sorry, guys. This is not the way you make software. Because if you do the architecture transformation, you also have to change people. It is not only the technology problem. It is also a problem with people. With people like my friend who didn't know how to SSH to machine. And he was proud of it. Stupid. The problem is also that if you go to any architecture, you will have to learn new tools. You will have to learn new practices. You will have to discover new patterns within your organization. You will have to make a ton of mistakes. Because what's in Sam Newman's book, it's not everything. This is the perfect scenario. The happy path is in this book. The problem is that it takes time, and usually the organization have one thing in common. They don't have time. And the thing that happens is, do you know the third Newtonian law of change management? It sounds, if you push people, they will push back even harder. If you come to somebody and say, Scala, from tomorrow, go. He will say, you know what he will say, the F word. You can't force people to use technology without supporting them. So there are some questions you will have to ask yourself. What is your deployment unit? Because you will be not shipping the zip file over email to some secret operations department. This is how some organizations in Warsaw deploy the software, by sending zip file over email to people who are sitting downstairs. Yeah? And they don't talk to each other. Well, it's fine. How to externalize configuration? How to make your services discoverable? Because you will have plenty of microservices. And it's not only discoverable for humans, but also for machines. And this is the things you will have to remember. I will never, ever make manual change on production environment. Automate. Because someday the bus can hit you, and people don't know what you did. I will not assign people roles, but rather responsibilities. I will not say to you, you are senior principal front-end Angular 2 TypeScript developer. You are a software engineer, okay? And you do everything you can to make system work. And you will not accept status quo, which is sometimes called organization structure.
And then? You have to, on the way to microservices, you have to understand your system. Because in our monolithic code base of 2 million lines of code, or 20.
3.5.
Yeah, 3.5 million lines of code. There are areas that you don't even care about. You don't care what's happening over there. That's not your problem. But that's even worse, because very often you don't really get how your system works, because no matter how perfect it is, it will break at some point. It will break badly. And then we need to understand, what's going underneath our application. And we need to understand the operating system. We need to understand the container technology if we're using one. We need to understand the JVM, the Java machine, why this part is taking so slow, just randomly at some different points in time. And then we have to understand the application framework. Who cares how Spring actually works underneath?
As long as it works.
As long as it works, we don't really care. But then if suddenly different beans get injected in different places, we say, what's happening? It's broken. We will change the framework because it doesn't work. And then finally, we have to understand our business, our application. And then if we go on the microservices world, for each service, this whole stack might be different. We try to standardize on different things, which is wise, which is good. But sometimes the requirements are just different. And we have this something built in Python or in .NET. Well, they say it's good because you can change the languages. You can go for Scala. Then you have to understand some different things in your application. Are we ready for that? No? Because once we assume that everything can fail, and it can fail in the microservices world, it can fail in any other monolithic application, there are some patterns in the microservices world which we can explore already now. We don't have to wait until we have this small discrete services doing one thing deployed as individual units. There are things like circuit breakers, like fallbacks, retry policies when we go for integration with external services. Who does it at the moment in their monolithic code base? Who cares whether this external call to remote EJB will actually fail or will not? And who does some additional precautions that it might fail and we will just secure ourselves against this failure? We don't want it. We don't do it. We don't care whether this message queuing that we are just pumping data will ever be filled, and we don't care about things like back pressure, that it can tell us that, yeah, I am full, don't send anything more. No, we don't care it. We just assume that everything will work, like the happy path. Because for many years, different technologies, like Java EE, just made a lot of effort to hide all those complexities. Like, this is a web service call, but you just wrap it in a stub and expose it as an EJB, and you inject this EJB locally, so you will never, ever know that it's actually a remote HTTP call until it fails, or until it will be unbelievably long and slow. Because we didn't care. And now, before we jump onto this microservices bandwagon, maybe we should think about how it actually works and start doing the things already in our monolithic code base, in our legacy systems, because then that will be the tools that we will not be able to live without in the microservices world. And if we don't use, and maybe we should start using it now. So some questions to ask, how shit works, how things works, how the containers technology is working. If we spun out different Docker images, how actually the networking goes underneath, whether we should care or we shouldn't. How the framework works, how the injection or how it's wrapping different things, or whether it's single-threaded or multi-threaded, should we care? What are the principles behind the framework, whether the beans are singletons or they are pooled, and whether it makes any difference? And how we document these decisions that impact our architecture in the past, so that we can learn from the past. So maybe we should never, ever treat remote systems as local first. And then we should never, ever assume that there is only the happy path in our application, and it will fail. And we should never, ever treat our frameworks as a black box. Oh, we don't care, it's Spring's job. No, it isn't.
Why I always have these slides with people?
Because you hate people?
Yeah, because I hate people. You know who it is? These are the architects and people who don't want to learn leaving your organizations once you migrate to microservices. Because you have to change the way you interact with people. When there is a problem in your organization, the system is not accessible, the Frankfurt DC is down, what happens in your organization? Usually these things, it's your fault. It's always your fault. And then he goes back and says, no, it's tester's fault. With this kind of behavior, because you will have failures not once a month, but every day almost, because the failure in microservices is the new normal, you can't have the blaming culture, because you have to start focusing on fixing things, not finding the people who are guilty. It's not a problem. Everybody breaks things. We have bad days. I have bad days. I will have a bad day tomorrow after today drinking, and probably will commit something to the repository. And things will happen. Sometimes you just want to leave your wife or husband.
Or cat.
You have... Okay, stop this. Not this presentation. So you have to focus on fixing things and improving, not on finding guilty people. Because it's not our goal to make perfect system. Okay? Our goal is to make system which is resilient. If it fails, we can quickly fix it. Okay? Not 24 hours down time. We'll have to, and this is what makes me angry. People don't care what happens with the system. Who has access to metrics? Not good. And you are making your software with blindfolds, because you don't know how it works. The other things, the metrics, can tell you where to refactor or where to fix system. And people don't do it, because we don't care. I just ship the code. Close, move the ticket in Jira, and I'm God. We should isolate failures. Okay? When one part of the system is down, it doesn't have. It means everything has to be down. Because you will work with the distributed system, and this is Leslie Lamport. This is my true hero, and his definition of distributed system: that the failure of computer you didn't know even existed can render your own computer unstable. Things will break. So the question is, we have to ask. Are we ready as an organization to do this? Maybe we'll have to fire the middle management, because they are the root of all evil in every organization. Are you tied to your job title? Do you have a situation in your organization when somebody says, hey, can you implement this test? No, I was hired as a programmer. I won't do testing. Do you have this kind of, I want implemented in Python because in my job title is Senior Java Backend Spring 2 Developer. So when the Spring 3 comes, you are no longer needed. Are you okay to fail? Or do you have a blaming culture? Are you product or project oriented? Are you focused on delivering project and deadlines? Or are you focused on delivering products? This is different. It doesn't always mean if you deliver a project, but you deliver product. So I will never ever say who needs metrics and logs. I will not say dupa in logs anymore. Because this is what you do, guys. I do it too. This is the most important debug statement. It expresses your emotions, what you feel about it. I will never ever let my system fail without my deliberate decision. This is I. I have a control. I am software engineer, and I decide you fail this now, not the system. I will not ignore things that go wrong. You know, the sweeping under the carpet. Everybody knows that you shouldn't log to this machine, but you know, don't tell it anyone. And I will not sacrifice system resilience for any other unexpressed goals.
So, are the monoliths here to stay? They say microservices are simple, but they aren't easy. So, maybe monoliths are not as bad as we think. You know, Martin Fowler once said that start with the monolith. But then he wrote start with the microservices.
It depends who pays at the moment for the article.
Probably.
Yeah.
But maybe our monoliths are just slightly less distributed system, and we should try to treat them as such. You know, because things can fail, and things will fail. You know, we have databases. Who has database in their system? No, everybody. And it's communicating over network, and it's a part of our system. So we have at least two components, like MySQL or Oracle, and then we have Mongo, who has like SQL and non-SQL database in their system. Yeah, so now we have three parts. Even though if our code base is very monolithic,
usually you have load balancers in front of your system.
Yes, because we are on 6 nodes, on 20 nodes, on 40 nodes. You know? So then we have like messaging queues. Who has messaging in their systems? Yeah, so another part. So fourth part. And then external systems integration. That's all coming together, and it's distributed system. But still in this distribution, we don't really treat it as a distributed system. So maybe we should start doing that now. And if we are fine with that, then we should think about microservices. Because why not apply the circuit breaker in our monolithic code base? It's fine. It's not new. It's something from 2004, probably.
And nobody said you can't use circuit breaker if you have monolith. Nobody.
No, it's fine. And then maybe
imagine EJB wrapped in Hystrix comment.
I can see it. So maybe we should automate. You know, have everything automated. Even if we deploy an enterprise archive, but we deploy it on 20 servers, why are we doing it manually? Maybe we should automate it. You know, so the changes, and so should we do changes to the infrastructure. Even though if we are running on the application server, whether it will be JBoss or WebSphere or WebLogic, we usually tend to tune this application server because we always change some libraries, we change some configuration, we tune XML files, and who does that automatically? You know, how many of you are doing just manually? You just logged those 6
Who has
nodes.
JBoss XML in SVN? It's always in production, and I know every server you have different version of the JBoss XML.
And maybe we don't need this concept of enterprise architecture, whether it's a role or whether it's a program. Maybe we can already automate the governance process of our enterprise. Just have it from the logs and from the tracing. Just have the image of how the application actually works. You know, whether it's a monolith or whether it's just multiple instances, we should already trace how it works, how the request goes, where it goes,
because
and where it fails.
Because what usually enterprise architects do, they are drawing. Do you want to pay people for drawing? if you can draw everything from the source code from logs file?
Why can't we use Zipkin in our semi-distributed system?
You can use Zipkin with JBoss.
Yeah,
this is my next open source project.
You can do it over RESTful interface. That's not that hard. Why don't we use consumer-driven contracts just now with all the external integrations? It's external. It has a certain, there is a provider, we are the consumer. Why can't we use already this concept of CDC, the consumer-driven contracts, just now? Our monolith has an API. It exposed some API. Why aren't we testing it in a way that we are going to test multiple microservices? We'll just embrace those concepts. And then, that's your favorite.
My favorite.
Yes, everything
but it's not about people.
No, it's not about people.
So, events are really sexy when you do microservices, the event streaming, event storming, event log, and event is everywhere. The question is why we can't use events with monoliths. Because usually when I talk with people about migration to monoliths, the first thing they want to do is to cut out the small module and do the microservices, extract the code, and as fast as you can, go to the microservices. What if we stay with JBoss, but on every call to our EJB, we push event to whatever we have? It can be JMS, ActiveMQ is fine. And then once we have all the business events on the queue, then we start to create microservices who consumes the events. Why not go this way? Why can't we have centralized logging? I had 86 JBosses. Find a bug with 86 log files. This was called distributed grep. You were doing SCP and calling over SCP a grep command on 86 services. This is MapReduce the bash way. But you can have Elasticsearch with your JBoss and have logs in Elasticsearch.
So are we there yet with the microservices? Shall we go there now, or whether we should wait a little bit?
I don't know.
Our message is that
this is the message.
There are things we've learned with microservices in our industry that we think can be applied in the monolithic world. It can trigger your migration. It can make certain things faster. It can change your attitude. It can make you look at things differently. So why don't we just use it now with whatever code base we are having?
I think this is the right moment because, do you know the hype cycle? I promise I won't use this example, but sorry. Do you know the hype cycle? When the new technology arises, there is a peak, everybody uses it, and then there is this valley of despair when everybody says, oh, it doesn't work. I think this year we are with microservices reaching this tipping point, because if InfoQ article says microservices doesn't solve all the problems, it means that we understood finally that this is not the solution to all of our problems, but we can still use the things we discovered. Yeah?
Yes, it will make our life just a little bit
easier. Happy faces.
Yes. So we will leave you with that message. Thank you very much. We were
6 minutes. What happened?
Time for questions. This is Jarek. Jarek works in Allegro and has 400 microservices under his hood.
Just 8.
And my name is Jakub, and I don't work in Allegro.
But have microservices too.
Yes.
On your laptop, at least.
You can reach us on Twitter, and we are open for any questions you might have. It's a good venue for having questions. It's not that huge as the other ones.
Are you sticking to those rules?
Which rules?
Yes, I recently implemented service discovery on my JBoss. It works, and circuit breakers were as well.
I think this is, for me, I can speak about the organization rules. Okay, I never did it, but this is the first company, there is no finger pointing. You are just focused on making things better.
And there are no middle managers.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.